Hello YouTube. In 1957, the elders of the tribes of Paraguay buried the honorary administrator of the Indian colonies, Ivan Belyayev. Who was the most unusual Russian white general, and why did he end up living among the natives of South America? When I refer to white generals, I use the name given to those who were fighting against communist forces in the Russian Civil War. The general name attributed to them was White Guard, as opposed to the Red Guards. This, of course, has nothing to do with race, but everything to do with politics. It would have been better if the Civil War never took place and Russia continued its promising development that it experienced from 1907 till 1914, but the idiotic First World War ensued and the consequences were horrible, including the imposition of Soviet rule in my country. To me, this general is of interest not only as a brave Russian warrior, but also because of his very interesting ideas about ancient civilizations. He was onto something, but that took place later in his life and in a faraway land. So we'll get to it. In Russia, Ivan Belyayev was born into the family of hereditary officer of the Russian Imperial Army. He himself entered military service at the age of 17. The son of the commander of the artillery brigade, he followed in his father's footsteps, and by the beginning of the First World War, as a colonel, commanded a battery in the 1st Caucasian Artillery Division. He participated in many battles, as well as the Brusilov breakthrough, and became a major general in the fall of 1917. Belyayev treated Russian communism or Bolshevism as a disease. He definitely was onto something. Since the spring of 1918, he commanded a battery in the White Guards Volunteer Army and subsequently was fully responsible for the artillery economy of the army. In 1920, together with the remnants of the White Guards units, Belyayev was evacuated by sea to the area of the Dardanelles Strait. And that's how his life was saved, because the rest, those who stayed behind, were executed. Thousands of them, but that's a different story. Having found himself in exile, Ivan Belyayev changed several countries. He lived in Turkey, Bulgaria, and Argentina, until in 1924 he arrived in Paraguay, where there were practically no Russian emigres at that time. This country attracted him even as a child, because he was fond of Indians. As a teenager, Belyayev, according to his confession, dreamed of the revival of Paraguay, a heroic country strangled by envious people. Here, the Russian general met a patriarchal society that reminded him of Russia before 1900, and he compared Asuncion with Vladikavkaz. Ivan Belyayev was teaching military affairs in Paraguay, and in October 1924, the government of the country sent him on an expedition to the unexplored Gran Chaco region, on the territory of which a military clash with Bolivia was expected. In Bolivian newspapers, 500,000 pesos were even offered for the head of the Russian general. Belyayev studied the terrain, the population of the province, and its languages until 1932, when the Chaco War really began. Juan Belyayev, as he was known in Paraguay, participated in the organization of the defense of the Paraguayans. He founded a fortification in the area of the strategically important freshwater lake Pitiantuta. Being an advisor to the president of Paraguay, the general asked to allocate him 4 artillery pieces and 500 shells. This, in his opinion, would have been enough to break the enemy's fortifications. However, the honored military man was refused. At the same time, other Russian emigre officers who came to Paraguay after Belyayev also distinguished themselves on the fronts of the Chaco War. It so happened that during the Chaco War there were 120 German emigre officers among the command of the Bolivian army, and among them the commander of the Bolivian army, Hans Kund, stood out. At the same time, about 80 officers of the former Russian army many white guard immigrants, served in the Paraguayan army. Among them, there were two generals, Ivan Belyayev and Nikolai Ern, as well as colonels, lieutenant colonels, majors, captains. One of them commanded a division during the fighting, 12 regiments, the rest battalions, companies, and batteries of the Paraguayan army. Both German and Russian officers were at one time participants in the First World War, and again became opponents of each other, but already in Latin America. At the same time, both of them tried to actively use the experience they gained during the World War I in combat operations. For example, Orangereyev brothers, Russian frontline soldiers, trained Paraguayan soldiers to burn enemy tanks from shelters. The disgraced Hans Kund was dismissed, and the Paraguayan army under Russian command soon went on the offensive. In December 1933, in the Battle of Campo Villa, the Paraguayans surrounded two divisions of the Bolivians, capturing or destroying 10,000 people. The following year, the Battle of El Carmen ended just as successfully. Well, war is war. Too bad people can't find other ways. And in 1935, the Bolivians no longer had any resources left to continue the war. In Paraguay, people still remember 6 Russian white immigrant officers who died in the Chaco War. Today, it is safe to say that the participation of Russian officers in the Chaco War helped turn tens of thousands of mobilized, illiterate Paraguayan peasants into a real army that was able to defend their country. The Paraguayans, they never remain ungrateful towards the heroes of this war. After its completion and to this day, the Russian community occupies an important place in the life of this country, and many streets in Asuncion and even entire settlements in Paraguay were named in honor of distinguished Russian officers. After the war, Ivan Belyayev continued to live for a long time among the Indians that he loved. From ethnographic research, he moved on to defending the interests of the indigenous people of Paraguay. The general took up this. He was disappointed in the idea. He tried to set up like a holy Russian state in Paraguay, but not a religious sense, but like a refuge. Clearly foreseeing the future, I did everything to open the way to salvation for all Russians, making no distinction for either Semites or sons of Ham. And if only thousands and 10,000s are saved, and not millions, who has the right to blame me for failure? Belyayev exclaimed in his memoirs, Notes of a Russian Exile. Look, if he succeeded, definitely hundreds of thousands of people would have been saved from communist experiments and concentration camps, from Nazi Holocaust, and I would say he would open the doors for others too, but if doesn't count. In the indigenous population of South America, the Russian researcher, saw immigrants from Asia. He was looking for confirmation of his theory in the folklore of the Indians. He believed that their languages are related to Indo-European and go back to Sanskrit. This is very important. As a linguist, Belyayev compiled dictionaries of several languages, translating their words into Spanish. He was also interested in the similarity of the myths of the Indians and the stories of Old Testament. This is interesting because he was on to many of the ideas that came to be, but like 40 years later, 50 years later. And also defending civil rights for Indians, the Russian general wrote letters to the League of Nations. In 1943, Belyayev obtained permission to create an Indian colony. At the same time, he headed the national patronage for Indian affairs. Well, Ivan Belyayev died in 1957. The honorary citizen of Paraguay was buried in a Russian Orthodox Christian church in the capital of the country, and then he had to be buried on the land of the Maka people near Asuncion. On the day of his death, the Indians, according to their confession, felt like orphans. They treated him as a messenger of God. So, I also read that treated him as a deity. Juan Belyayev belonged to the Russian Orthodox Church, as I said. So at his funeral, the Indians sang Russian song Otche Nash, or Our Father, and thousands of people, including top officials of the state, came to say goodbye to the general. The Indians refused to let the authorities bury Belyayev together with the rest of the Russians in the Russian cemetery, obeying the desire of the Russian general himself. His body was transported 50 kilometers from Asuncion, where he was buried on a hill, and a Christian crypt was erected over the body. His wife, Alexandra, died 5 years after her husband's death. They had no children, but they were successfully replaced by Indians. Look, after the death of this Russian general, many Indians began to name their children after Belyayev. Now there are about 2,000 Chacmacocos living in Paraguay, and they all owe their lives to the Russian general. According to his will, it was after the memorial service that his body was transported to the west bank of the Paraguayan River, where the Grand Chaco region begins, and buried in a mausoleum, as I said, inside the Maka reservation. And portraits of Belyayev still adorn the houses of the Indians, and monuments to him have been erected in one of the settlements. It's very interesting. I mean, the Russians who had to escape communist takeover of their country with arms in their hands, they were fighting, but then they had to leave. Anyway, they left their imprint on many countries, but this general was a very interesting person, of course, and he helped the Indians, which is very important as well. He was the best of the Russian character, I would say. Would be interesting to know more about his ideas and the patterns that he found between the local Indian cultures and beliefs, and definitely other, like the Sanskrit, like ancient India. But that's all we know at this point. And this is what I wanted to let you know today. So if you like my research, please support me through the links in my channel, and I'll bring you more videos about other parts of our exciting world. Thank you.